Live show. Today is March 11th, 2023. Got a great show lined up for you today. Going to get into some more propaganda like we did last week, taking a look at the clown world expose. We've got a special guest joining us, Will Keller. Many of you know Will. Awesome friend of mine and amazing content creator and ambassador for truth. So we're going to be getting into the topic of controlled opposition, Agent Smith symbolism. And of course, as will be the regular, we'll be joined again by Rodney Goodwin to bring us some awesome astrology breakdown. So awesome show. Very excited about it. Let me know in the comments. Are you here? Are you awake? Are you ready for some good truth and hopefully entertainment as well? So let's get into it. All right. Welcome into the show. If you're new here, this channel is all about bringing you the spiritual tools and mindsets to bring you a more free and empowered life. Our growing community for those seeking self-improvement, spiritual evolution, and a tribal family. If this is your path, join us. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell. Make sure you do that. That's very important. That's the best way to bypass these retarded algorithms and truth suppression mechanisms that they're wielding out with these Orwellian platforms. So make sure you click that bell. And as for the like button, well, you know what to do.
Smash, smash, smash. Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. So first segment, we have under the macroscope. So we're going to get into a little bit of propaganda, shall we say, decoding, kind of reading between the lines and looking at the programming, this sly and insidious mental manipulation that's going on there. So okay, so episode 2. And switch over. So here we go. This one. So I've been seeing this shared like a screenshot on Facebook and social media. This headline, and it really caught my attention to the point I'm like, is this real or is this something somebody made like as a parody? So I looked it up, and yeah, sure enough, this is a real article posted by The Atlantic, which claims to be a reputable news source. Been around for like 160 years, pure unbiased truth and reporting on the. I'm like, wow, well done. We'll see about that. So, right off the bat here, following your gut isn't the right way to go. I mean, that's the title. This is a total this is a gaslighting piece through and through. I mean, very obvious. The experts had a rough year. We still have to trust them. And granted, this is an older article, so keep that in mind when this was written, the context. But I find it interesting actually, because this is one of those where you can like kind of see, this did not age well. Some of the things they say in here really did not work out so well. So let's get into it. Says, I've spent years telling people, usually with exasperation and a certain amount of petulance, to, so at injecting emotion right off the bat, he's saying, he's exasperated and petulant to have to even bother telling people to trust experts and stop obsessing. There's that word obsessing. It reminds me of last week that they used the word fixation. right? And I said that kind of evokes like this idea of like an addict, right? Obsession, uh, about the rarity of their failure. The rarity of their failure. I mean, it's so rare when experts fail and these institutions do bad things, right? So why focus on that? There's so much like false narrative like baked into this, and this is how they do it. They speak as if certain frames are true, and that's where the gaslighting comes in, because in order to accept what they're saying at face value, you also have to basically accept the frame that they're speaking within. But that was before a crisis in which millions of lives were dependent on a working relationship between science and government. So just highlighted this here. Lives were dependent. So it's like there's another, what it's saying here is that if there isn't this relationship between science and government, lives are at stake. Yeah, this is in context of a pandemic, but regardless, it's still, I mean, your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference. It's still kind of conveying the same kind of idea. Now that I must take my own advice, I feel the same anxiety I've so often dismissed in others. We, and I'm including myself here, need to come back to our senses about expertise. Back to our senses. Don't trust your gut, but we have to come back to our senses. That makes total sense, doesn't it? My gut instincts are much like those of any other American. And I point this out now. I notice throughout this article, he's constantly trying to kind of relate, like to, well, it's normal to have your questions. I have mine too. My gut instincts are much like those of any other American. They're wrong, but they're just like yours. Mine are wrong too, right? I'm not special in this. I'm just being the voice of reason here. That's all what's built into this. When my wife and I became eligible for COVID vaccination in our state, we plowed through different locations and times trying to capture an appointment. When we finally nailed down a date, I blurted out as if it mattered. Which in it is it? I immediately ran through questions in my head. Do I trust the new Johnson and Johnson? Do I prefer one or two? Are their data more reliable than theirs? Perhaps, and you'll understand. I'm sort of kind of avoiding certain words just to you know uh, maximize my chances of not getting censored. Perhaps most important, do I have any idea what I'm talking about? The answer is no. So, it's like original sin. You first have to accept this belief about yourself. I'm stupid. I don't know anything. You have to accept that first in order to then say, okay, fine. If that's true, then I guess I do need to just trust the experts, right? I do not have any idea what I'm talking about when it comes to I'm a political scientist, which is to say I'm not a scientist at all. I have no special training. Um, I've never been given a choice about, and so I dutifully got my flu, polio, smallpox, tetanus, and other without asking any of these questions. Dutifully. Isn't that a nice word? I could have been getting with a syringe full of iced tea for all I knew. I mean, he's even saying blindly trust. It could have been anything. Who cares? It was my duty. I feel better informed about them now, but my knowledge doesn't really matter. My wife's doctor cut to the chase when she told us to take whatever's available, and that's what we're going to do. But like many otherwise reasonable people, see, there's that trying to relate to you. Oh, you and me, we're the same. So that's why you need to listen to me, right? Uh, I felt a bit unmoored during this chaotic year amid the influx of new guidelines and mandates, a little hesitant to cede my instincts. I wonder why that is. God forbid it's unnatural to not listen to your own instincts, to the advice of strangers. Less reasonable people have had no hesitation at all about ignoring such instructions altogether. Our unmooring isn't entirely our fault. Policymakers and local officials allowed themselves to be whipsawed by anger. They tried to thread the needle between science and public unhappiness and ended up in some cases with promulgated rules that made no sense at all. So he's saying we had some of these policymakers faltered in their firmness on the data, the science, whatever, just to try to make people happy, and that's what gave them a bad image. It wasn't that, it was their deviation from the science that gave them the bad image, just trying to make it to please people. Public health officials suffered from self-inflicted wounds, great and small. Early inconsistency about masks and transmissibility confused even well-meaning people who just wanted to know the right answer. What is that saying? That right truth comes from the authority, right? Whatever the authority says is the right answer. These good, well-meaning people, they just want to know what's right, what's true. And this early inconsistency is what confused them, obviously. Over the summer, hundreds of the same experts who told us not to gather in small groups, for instance. Let me scroll down a little bit here, trying to save on time. So it's saying like Trump didn't really follow and wasn't honest, that his responsibility for the public hostility to basic life-saving measures, including masking. There's a didn't age well thing. Like, it's now like been admitted that it doesn't even do anything, much less being a basic life-saving measure. And then this other guy over here, or girl, I should say, Christy Nome, I'm assuming her gender, don't cancel me, basically told people to do whatever they wanted. Wow. Freedom. And that predictably resulted in death. Let's associate those two ideas. The one person that said, do whatever you want, actually be free, well, that resulted in death. So, we all see like how that goes when you try to take your own freedom into your own hands. But when the pandemic recedes, after we had reflected on all this death and heartbreak, we'll need to recover some perspective and learn once again when to put aside our gut instincts and listen to the people who know what they're doing. How did that age? When the pandemic recedes and after we have reflected on all of this death and heartbreak. Oh, which death? The death of this mysterious, invisible thing, or the death of people side-duddenly on the soccer field and on live TV and stuff like that. As paradoxical as this advice may seem, more gaslighting right there. As crazy as this might seem, to just ignore gaslight yourself, ignore your own instincts, one important step to regain our footing is for ordinary citizens to stop constantly seeking information. Imagine this. Wow. That's great. As if we're fish darting about in a tank that's been sprinkled with food. Because we all have the mind of a goldfish. I say this as a victim of the same affliction. Affliction! Constantly seeking information is an affliction, don't you know? Like everyone else, I'm overwhelmed with extraneous information. I'm far too awash in data, including much that I'm not equipped to understand, etc., which is, there's actually some truth to that. That's the point, is they can't control the information anymore, or by suppressing and stifling it. So they do the opposite. They just flood with nonsense to where it does admittedly become difficult to know what's what. I'm not advocating for accepting whatever experts say without delay or question, except you are. When our instincts and expert advice are in conflict, that represents a real dilemma. Oh gosh. Experts can say that something is safe, but if we don't feel that it's safe, our inner voice can win out over reason. Our inner voice can win out over reason. Interesting. Likewise, when experts say something is bad for us, we often dispose of that advice in favor of listening to the little imp on our shoulder telling us that it's something we want to do. I pulled up the definition of imp: a small demon, a mischievous child. So your gut instinct is an imp, but the experts, represent the voice of reason. I mean, good grief, man. It's mind-blowing. This is a reputable, news source here. We must also ask whether we just trust particular individuals or whether our beef is with the entire system. That's actually a really good point. But his assertion is the opposite of the truth. Basically saying a certain amount of skepticism towards individuals is normal, but the problem is mistrusting the system as a whole. I had no particular objection to Biden's statement because I tend to trust that he's listening to experts. I did not, however, trust that Trump was doing the same. So there's a little bit of bipartisan programming there. The blue guy, he's probably doing the right thing, but the red guy, he's bad. So I don't trust it. I trusted those professionals not because they wear a white jacket or have certificates on their wall, but because I have confidence in the educational and scientific infrastructure that created them. This belief is the crux of the matter. Now we're getting into the heart of it. As we're nearing the end of this article, it becomes a religious belief. And you'll see they even use language, which we'll get to. The rest of us, however, can do better. So there, he's just wrapped all that up in a nice little package, labeled it. That's the problem. The rest of us, okay, this is cult mentality. It's us and them. The rest of us, though, we can do better. Virtue signaling. We are capable of being serious adults who understand if we choose to try and accept that in every crisis, risk, and imperfect solutions exist while still maintaining our faith in expertise. All hail, holy experts, in nomine Patri et Spiritus Sancti. Okay, you just have to have faith in all that technology under your feet. He goes into this anecdote about he was on a ship with this Navy guy, and he was an expert sailor, and he was the author here was terrified of the big scary black sea, in the night sky, and how do you manage the anxiety? And this was his response, that he's somehow relating, which, I mean, honestly, it's a really poor connection. It doesn't actually apply here. What he meant was that you had to trust that everyone involved in making that submarine had done their job in good faith and to the best of their abilities. Yeah. What has history shown us? That government always cares about you. It always has your best interests in mind. So you need to just trust that they're always acting in good faith and to the best of their ability. That is the crux of the problem right there. And that's religious belief right there. I get a little shaky thinking about being alone on a boat. There's more emotional manipulation there. I get a little shaky thinking about being all on my own and not having any experts. And just as I do about getting a shot in my arm to protect me from something no one knew existed a year ago, but I know that dedicated and decent people created such miracles. Miracles, I tell you. They have done their part, and I will do mine. What do you think of that? Let me know in the comments what you think about that article, what you think about my analysis of it. So, yeah, that is our Under the Macroscope segment for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll go through a couple of quick announcements real quick, and then we will move on to the astrology report with Rodney Goodwin, who is standing by patiently backstage. So, again, to let everyone know that one of the best way to support the channel, of course, is subscribing, hitting the bell, and simply hitting the like button. That is going to help the video be seen by more people. But if you do wish to contribute in some way monetarily, this is probably the easiest and best way, because it's a passive participation. You support with $4.99 a month, and you get some of these nice perks as well. But at the end of the day, you're helping support our mission and help us grow our outreach. So that's one thing you can do. And then, sorry, I had a lot going on today. I didn't have time to fully prepare. But also, we have the Wizard Factory shop is now up and running. I just got this package in today. There's the tank top, which is this one right here. All these come in multiple colors. There's stuff for the ladies. You got the yoga pants. I mean, look at that. Sexy. Hats, coffee mugs, stickers. I mean, pretty much there's something in here for everybody. And that really, does help out the channel. So I hope you check something out. And yeah, I guess let's go ahead and get into the astrology with Rodney. So hey, Rodney, how you doing, man?
Hey, doing great, man. How you guys doing? How you doing out there?
Doing great. Welcome to the show. Welcome back, brother. People loved you last week, dropping
Yeah.
the truth bombs and telling us what's going on up there in the sky, as above, so below. Always good wisdom to be gleaned there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Today we're going to get into a major, one of the major transits of the year, Saturn in Pisces. Wow. A lot of that, content that you just covered with that news article had a lot of Piscean influence and context to illusion. Just, that Neptune energy, just illusionary aspects to the Saturn moon matrix, jamming everybody, and playing on everyone's ignorance. I mean, when we talk about Saturn and Pisces, what's happening? Saturn's entering the 12th gate. Okay. So it's been in Capricorn, it's been in Aquarius, and when you're dealing with Saturn, we're dealing with with structures and foundations and boundaries. When we're dealing with Neptune, or the Piscean energy aspect, we're dealing with no boundaries. So boundaries are dissolved. So you have this Saturn coming into the 12th gate, looking to establish boundaries and foundations, whereas the Piscean energy doesn't have foundations. He's kind of seeing the big picture, but it also is dealing with the Neptune aspect, because what's happening? It's dealing with the illusionary aspect to what the Neptune energies represent. So a lot of that stuff you were bringing up in the article, dealing with all those metaphorical terms that they were trying to use, trying to wrap them into figures of speech so that they would have an impact, what you called gaslighting. This is the problem with people. They don't understand natural law. They don't understand cosmic principle. They don't understand how things actually work here. So they're just really, stepping into their ignorance. Well, this 12th gate with Saturn coming in is going to be a reality check. This is what's going to happen. Literally, I do have one of the things you were talking about too was the feet, and the feet represent Pisces. So when we're talking about the Piscean energy, we're dealing with the 12th house. So that's dealing with mental illness, mental hospitals in general, isolationism, that type of stuff on the shadow aspect of the 12th gate. So the mental illness and the neurosis that's taking place on the collective level is all that Piscean energy on the shadow side, because people aren't really linking themselves up with what I call the true Saturnian energy, which is actually cosmic principle, and being able then to manifest or bring that into the reality field in context to that 10th gate, being the manifestation of what we call your MC line. So that's where you leave your legacy in context to truth, and how you're wielding truth within your own, personal dialogue, internal dialogue, and personal, reality field, and what you're creating, in your own field as an individual. And so I have kind of some bullet points I'd like to pull up, if that's okay.
Of course.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and screen share here. If you can see that.
Here we go. Yeah, there we go.
Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, so these are just some bullet points that I want to just go through real quick with this particular transit. So this transit is going to be lasting until February 13th, 2026. It will move into Aries in 2025, but then it's going to pull back in retrograde, and it will come back into the Piscean energy, finishing up the 12th gate, and then it will move back into Aries on February 13th, 2026. So it's a very long transit that we're dealing with here. And, when we're dealing with that, what is actually happening? Saturn is coming in to bring a reality check to the 12th house on a collective level and an individual level as well. So, if you have placings in Pisces, or you have placings in 12th house, this is really going to bring a reality check to your belief systems. Like you were talking about the religious aspect. This Saturn energy, in its high vibe state, is going to test religious structures, belief systems, illusional aspects that you think into your life, that you have, that are operating in your life, that need a checkup. They need to be checked. They need to be a litmus test. They need to be pressure tested. And this is what Saturn does. It comes in and it pressure tests your systems of beliefs. And when it's in 12th house, it's really challenging the Neptune energy, because Neptune, where is it setting right now? It's setting in Pisces. So it's setting in the same gate now as Saturn moved into Pisces. And so this is what's happening. The Neptune energies, or the illusional aspects, or the 12th house, in context to that, where actually Saturn is wrapping up its 30-year cycle into 2026, February 13th, is going to be dealing with the ignorance. And this is where the karmic aspect gets wielded to, because people are just ignorant, and willfully so. That article just proves it. You have to trust the science. You have to trust what these people are saying about this. And even though it's not been tested, there's been no real test going on with that. Yet we need to believe that. Well, that's an illusion. See, that's the illusion the media and the governmental aspects put out there, and they use the media, which is their baby, to bring it out, to spin it out, and to get you into a position where, well, they're the experts. They're the ones that have to be right. We don't really need to investigate this. There's no real knowledge or reason behind what they're doing, but it doesn't matter, because they're the scientists and they're the ones that are telling us to do this. So they must know what's right. See? And this is where we get into the illusionary aspect on a collective level, because you're just a cog in the wheel, man. You're just a number. You just need to get in line. See? And so Saturn's going to bring a reality check to illusions on an individual and a collective level when it comes into this gate. The other thing that will happen on the flip side is that it will also bring a very difficult test to people who are in these illusions, and drive them deeper into it if they don't come in to face the mirror here. See? And so there's going to be a separation that's going to take place in this next 2.5 to 3 years between those who are really going to come into truth and those who are going to go deeper into the illusion. You see how that works, Logan, with that separation?
Yes.
The other thing on the second bullet point is it's going to bring form to the formless. So think about this. Saturn is like, 10th gate, Capricorn, prima materia, working with the physical world, and setting boundaries and bringing things into manifestation. Whereas the 12th gate is all about your what? Your imagination, your intuition, the things that you cannot see or concretely put into form. So Saturn's coming in here to work, and taking that to the third bullet point, to work with our skill sets here as healers and shamans, and to bring those skill sets into a higher place by honing us, see, and then being able to bring that imagination, that imagination of the 12th house and the intuitive aspect, your guts feelings, right? And how things are actually wielding to alignment with truth and cosmic principle, and bringing that into the manifestation of the 10th gate. So you're bringing what you can imagine into manifestation. So those are and then the healers and the shamans will have a level up here if they're truly working with the Saturnian energies, not only on their natal aspect, but with transits. And so as that begins to happen, the healers, the shamans, those who have come to heal, are going to get a level up these next 2.5 to 3 years, are going to have if you want it, you've got to go after it. You got to put the work in, just like Saturn asks you to do, cause and effect. You put the work in, you're going to get the result. And that's how it works. When you have your thought, your will, your emotions, your actions in alignment with truth, you are going to get the level up here in context to working with the Saturnian energies in the 12th house, especially if you have psychic abilities and you have, high level of intuition. You're going to be honed. You're going to be tested. The structures of your belief systems are going to be tested. Does what I believe actually line up with truth? That's what this gate's all about. The next thing it's doing, there's this release of the Saturn-Uranus square. It's been a 45-year cycle that's been going on. And basically, it started in 1988, and it's going to actually end up in 2032. We are going to have some more aspects that are going to happen with that square, but they won't be straight up like 0 or 1 degree. But that particular square has been a polarity issue on the planet. The struggle between freedom, Uranus, rebellion, freedom, moving against the system, moving into a place of sovereignty and free will, which is what the Uranus aspect represents, and the Saturnian energies, especially on the inversions in context to government, and structures of Saturnian aspects that are on the lockdown in context to that article that you just read. See? And dealing with those two. And so there's this battle in the sky between, the governmental, hard inverted aspect of, of Saturnian energies and the ignorance that's there in context to that, and the Uranus aspect that's been there. That's like, hey, we need to break this slavery. We need to come into our freedom and sovereignty. We need to rebel against this because it is a scourge on the earth in context to that. So there's been this battle in the sky between these two orbs that have been creating a lot of tension, on the planet in context. Well, that's released. That is released now. And so what we have is this release into all this 12th house energy. Things could get really crazy in the reality field in context to the collective stuff that's going to be going on the planet here the next 2.5, 3 years, in context to this, because, this could really just burn like when the levee breaks, that old, Led Zeppelin song, man. Boom. All of a sudden you got all this water being released. See? And so if people aren't dealing with their deep emotional aspects and keeping it in alignment, it can throw people into some serious mental health issues, even deeper now than they're already into. And this could create a major schism and separation between, actual, Saturnian high level, cosmic principle and natural law, in between, the illusionary aspect, which is what we've been seeing. We've been seeing the separation really starting to take place. But the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to the schism is going to widen. The next thing on the bullet point is merging of the seen and the unseen realms and cultivating a deep understanding of natural law. This is exactly what this particular trance is going to do. It's going to allow people who are doing the path work, who are, people who are maybe tuning into this broadcast right now, that if they really do the work, they're going to be able to actually step into a place, a higher level place, to see the unseen. And that's the spiritual world. That is the world that, Saturn doesn't rule, because Saturn is time. Time is driven by the 3D realm in context. So when we're dealing with time, we're dealing with Saturn, okay? And that's space and time. That is, dealing with what? Creating space and time within your own reality field. When you're dealing with the 12th house, you're dealing with the spiritual aspect. If you want to get into it, this is all the, the demonic stuff that's going on, the satanic stuff that's happening, that is, underhanded, that is used or that is released into the ethers in context to that. See, so that's the spiritual world that is working. So as shamans and healers, we will be able to step into a higher level in context to our first eye and our third eye, and connecting those together to bring and to be able to see the unseen on a much clearer aspect, bringing things into clarity in context to that, especially if you're staying with truth and natural law. And the last point I want to make is the ultimate goal of Saturn and Pisces is to accept, understand, and integrate, working with boundaries between the imagination and the tangible. A most difficult challenge, but after all, it is Saturn, right? So these are some of the bullet points that are going on with this particular transit. And if you haven't, learned how to ground yet, you better learn how to ground these next 2.5 to 3 years, because there's some major tests coming in context to that 12th gate and that 12th house. And, we could really, we've got to learn how to use these energies and bring them in to our advantage, and then wield them correctly in context to truth. And if we can do that as healers and as shamans, as mystics, bringing this energy into reality, bringing the unseen into the seen world, manifesting what you can imagine, and bringing that into manifestation into that Saturnian 10th gate in context to Capricorn, dealing with your MC line at the top of your natal chart. In context to that, this is your purpose, how, of what you are supposed to, your legacy, what you're supposed to bring forth, to your own spiritual life, and then how you're going to input that from your individual aspect to the collective aspect. So that's just some of the bullet points there with the Saturn and Pisces transit.
Amazing. I absolutely love that. And just as a quick mention, if you are, as Rodney said, this is the time to ground, to build up your own personal energetic field and your boundaries. So what better way to do that than casting the circle of the Magi?
Absolutely.
If you're unfamiliar with how to do that, definitely check out the initiation package. It's a free download. I'll actually put this QR code on screen here. This will take you right to the landing page, so you can sign up for that. And there's some other things that it covers in there as well. But yeah, absolutely. That Saturn and Pisces is, it's a time to go within, draw the circle, create your sacred space, and go inward, dive into those deep waters, into the murky darkness of yourself, and explore, because that is where the greatest treasures are found. And when we're talking about we're at spiritual war right now, if you are doing that work, then when the bullets, and we're not talking about it could be physical, but even metaphorical or energetic bullets start flying, that's not the time to pick up and start trying to do target practice and do your training. You got to do that now, like get ready. Okay. Because you just have to do that work and get prepared, because there ain't no saviors. Nobody's going to come save you. You have to be ready to stand on your own 2 feet in your own strength and your own power. And you can do it. Like it's scary, but you can do it as long as you just start now, like start as soon as you can and just take it little bit by little bit each and every single day. That's the only path to greatness that anyone's ever taken. So
you have to train yourself, and that's creating protocols and rituals to your daily life. And when you're doing that, you're grounding. That's how you ground, because you're setting in certain intent within your own personal life that brings that up. I mean, this Saturn in Pisces is like, just to give an example, it's like, when you're hearing a song, and you're not quite sure what the lyrics are, not 100% sure what the lyrics are, but you're kind of like singing along, and you make up like, or you like think it says this. So you've been singing that song that way your whole life. And then you actually go look at the song. That's Saturn. You research, you go look at the song, right? And the lyrics didn't say anything like what you thought they said. See? You were in an illusionary aspect of what those lyrics actually were until you went and actually looked at them. See? And this is what the Saturn in Pisces is going to bring to us. It's going to bring us into a place where we actually have to look at our belief systems or our belie systems, how things are lying to us, to the illusion, and what we're still holding on in context to that lie, to that illusion, and then being honest with ourselves, looking in the mirror, because Pisces represents the subconscious, unconscious mind field, So that's how we have to deal with it. So just a little example there of kind of what that kind of, looks like.
yeah, I love it, man. Amazing. Thank you, Rodney. Any final words or wisdom to share, and tell the people where they can find you?
Yeah. Hardcoreproductions.com. You can email me, hardcoreproductions9@gmail.com. You can get a hold of me on my Facebook page, Hardcore Productions, or you can hit me up on Messenger at Rodney Goodwin. These are the spaces you can get a hold of me at. My last words would be, to those who know that they're shamans, who know that they're healers, these next years, you're going to be honed. Your skill sets are going to be honed. They're going to be brought into a place where they're going to be tested. And you've got to be available to look at the mirror and be honest with yourself. And don't rationalize, don't lie to yourself, don't put yourself in positions where, you think you know it all, because you don't, and I don't either. And so we have to get into that place where we allow this energy to teach us. And that's what Saturn actually is. Saturn actually is a teacher, if you want to talk about it. Saturn don't give a shit how you feel. It doesn't care how you feel. It's going to hone you. And if you want to not work with Saturn, that's your choice. But I guarantee you, if you learn how to work with the Saturnian energies, not only in your natal chart, but also with your transits, you will begin to be honed as a mage. You'll begin to be honed as a shaman, as a mystic. Your abilities, your psychic abilities, all this will be honed. And I guarantee you, these next 2.5 to 3 years, you will be shedding the snake skin if you do that. Over and over and over. And by the time you get out of this particular transit with Saturn and Pisces, you will not know yourself. You'll be like, holy crap, who the hell was that guy back in 2023? So that's just a few of my words. Logan, thank you for having me on, man. I appreciate you so much. Awesome show. And boom, man, we're doing it, man. We're putting it out there.
Here we are, dude. Thank you so much, Rodney. Always bringing that heat and that wisdom. Much love to you, man, and we will see you next week. All right?
All right, man.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Show some love for Rodney down below. Always great things to share from his astrological perspective, which is so important when you're talking about arts of gnosis. Knowing thyself, knowing that the currents and flows of the energies, that the environment that you're operating in, right? If you don't know where you're at and what you're doing, like you can't make the best decisions. You're not informed. You don't have that edge. So that's what we're all about here. This channel is to bring you that edge in whatever way possible regarding truth and natural law that is and remains. So that wraps up that segment. I will run a quick promo for the initiation package, and then we will dive into the topical discussion with our great guest, Will Keller.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just want to take a quick moment to offer you a special gift. It's the free initiation package download. This is a free download package that includes the Toolbox mini course. I created this package to equip you with all of the essential tools you need for any type of energetic or magical practice for anyone serious about their spiritual development. It's comprised of 3 parts: the circle, the breath, and the voice, where you'll learn how to cast the Circle of the Magi, various breathwork techniques, including a powerful guided breathwork meditation, rune galler, and more. You'll also get access to the Inner Sanctum, our private Facebook group and Discord server, as well as some Wizard Factory wallpapers for desktop and mobile, all for free. And for those who've already seen this course, I'm happy to announce that this is a brand new remake with better production and even more information. You can find the link to get yours in the description below. So check it out and let's get back to the content.
Thanks, Logan. That was a great promo. So, moving on, everyone, we're joined by the great Will Keller. Welcome to the show, Will.
What's up, my brother? How's it going, man? Fire show so far. Rodney always brings the heat. I love it, man.
Absolutely. Feeling good. Happy to be here. Loving this show, how things are going with this so far. So for those unfamiliar with Will, he is a fellow truth seeker and truth speaker. He's on multiple platforms. He's created amazing presentations. He's put together and organized digital conferences, which we have one coming up in June, I believe, right?
Correct. Yep. Funnel 3, the Trivium, June 24th.
Which I will be presenting on as well. That'll be my first full effort, we'll say, presentation, which I'm extremely excited for what I'm putting together for that. I really think it's going to be very powerful. So excited to have you on, brother. And we got a great topic to get into today. This idea of everyone is Agent Smith until no one is. And we're talking about Agent Smith from the film The Matrix. So what we're talking about here is controlled opposition, basically. And this idea came from something that Will has done on his other channel, Natural Freedom League. So, but we were talking in private, and I just thought it was such a profound and powerful topic that I think people will be very interested to hear about, because it's something you don't hear about as much in these circles regarding natural law and things like that. So we're going to get into that, and then after that, we're going to get into some calls, taking calls live here on the show. If you missed last week, this is what we do. I dropped the actual Restream join link and pin it in the comments. So anyone who wants to be on the show, you can be on camera if you want, or if you just want to be audio only, and share your share a question for us. Me and Will will take those. So really excited about that segment. But let's go ahead and get into this topic. So Will, would you like to go ahead and just kind of lay out what is this concept that we're getting into here?
Yeah, for sure. My partner John and I did an episode on it, and it's such a relevant topic even now. We see these terms get thrown around, right? Oh, that person is controlled opposition. And it's cherry picking people's information, whoever they may be. They might say something that they personally don't like or don't resonate with, or it could just be wrong. They throw everything out of the bathwater, right? Baby out with the bathwater. All their information is no good. What we need to keep in mind is, sure, there's paid agents out there that are misleading the public, with real misinformation and misdirection. But also, that's pretty much irrelevant if you think about it. If you get down to the causal factors of mind and what the message, the totality of the message of that person, whether it be, alternative media, a content creator, anyone propagating knowledge and information, what's their core message? This reveals a lot of of themselves and the direction they're trying to take people, right? It's really important. John and I talked a lot about Del Bigtree. Del Bigtree is, he's a big proponent against the genetic modification and the needlecraft, but he's not anti-vax. He's actually pro-vax, right? So you got this guy that's got a huge following, but yet he's not actually addressing the causal factors, the core issues that always reside in mind, and the belief of authority, right? It doesn't get down to is government legitimate, et cetera, et cetera. He validates the system. And there's a lot of people that do this. These people are opposition. Whether he's paid or not doesn't matter. His level of psychology is, his level of awareness is insufficient to create change. And in my opinion, this is opposition. It's leading people down a path of just rearranging chairs on the Titanic, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I would personally, I would add a nuance to that of saying maybe the person themselves isn't opposition, but they are carrying opposition within their consciousness and as content creators, as public figures, they're putting that out into the world. The ignorance that they carry within themselves is the opposition to truth by its nature, because truth is at war with illusion, with non-truth, with lies. And so whether they're, like you said, Will, whether they're a paid agent, whether they're doing this intentionally or not, is irrelevant to the actual outcome, because they are still putting forth their ideas, many of which are not only false but harmful and detrimental to the awareness of truth in the people that follow them. So I think that's an extremely important overall thing to consider, but also to kind of add that nuance that, it's a slippery slope to start viewing every person as your enemy. That's not what we're kind of trying to say with this topic, but rather looking at the ideas, that each individual idea that a person is sort of promoting as truth, especially the more influential person, when we're talking about your Del Bigtree or like,
Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan, yeah, that's who I was trying to. It's a perfect example because he's very much seen as this like fringy, truthy guy, right? He's against the system, man, and he'll talk about conspiracies and this and that, and it's like, but it only goes so far. And if people aren't aware of the causal factors, it all has to come back to that. It all has to point towards that. Everything that you do, especially stepping into this type of position of influence, of being a sort of ambassador for truth, as it were, it's of paramount importance to actually understand not only the problem, what's causing the problem, and how to reverse that. And many, if not most, of these so-called figures just simply don't have it. And
yeah, for sure. And, going to what Rodney touched on so elegantly, you got to have that fundamental, that anchor. That anchor is natural law, the foundational dynamics of reality and within ourselves. This is your anchor point, right? Where all other information can get filtered through. And this is kind of what lacks in the public, even within so-called truth seekers. So many people just they don't have that skill set, that psychological skill set, and they don't know themselves. That people are very easily, they just jump on bandwagons. It's kind of a lazy way and an abdication of responsibility to go, oh, I really like that guy, so everything he says is gospel. Right. And this is what we see, a lot with, people like Joe Rogan or Tim Pool and stuff like that, because it's confirmation bias. It validates them and what they believe. And this kind of, neo-tribalism, us versus them type of mentality is prevalent. And, people need to do that internal work and also understanding on how to think. This is where the trivia method comes in, right? It's like when people are listening to us right now, don't look at our good looks or the shit I got in the back. Actually listen to the words that we're saying and then think about that and take time to process it, right? So people like to do this. They go through other people's work and they cherry pick stuff that they don't like, and then they throw them out, like I said earlier. Same goes as jumping on the bandwagon. So it's fascinating, but we're seeing it's even in that article, right? The article is just a perfect example. Your analysis was spot on too. It's blind belief, lack of thinking. This is what makes us human, that we have the capability to think, right? So it's deep.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to add, was that how well this kind of relates to the article and that overall idea. But also, I wanted to kind of break down the allegory that we're getting at here with this Agent Smith thing, because in the movies, you know, the agents aren't really their own entity. They're a code of the matrix that infiltrate and infect normal people that are plugged in. And that's so key. I mean, that's such a profound allegory right there, is that it's these programs that people are carrying. And getting into a little bit of kind of what I'll be touching on with my presentation regarding mind control for FUNL, is your trauma is the entry points for these programs to take control. That's the code that it latches onto and hits execute, and then suddenly you shapeshift and you're an agent and you don't even realize it because it's unconscious, right? Your trauma, your pain is unconscious, and it's creating unconscious behaviors. And you're going to latch on to these false beliefs that are a negative correspondence to your mentalism, to your state of mind, to that, to your wounding. You're going to look for beliefs and ideas that correspond to your pain and your wounding and your trauma, as a projection of that internal state on the world. And then you're clinging to that as a false truth. To you, it's truth, but in reality, it's a false identity, something that is completing the fragmented self that you're trying to reconcile. So you have to be, I mean, this is why it all comes back to internal state, self-awareness, because yourself, in a non like narcissistic or egoic way, yourself is the most important thing in your life to you. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you're not tending to your own needs, if you're not seeing to your own boundaries and desires and, soul path, you're wasting your life. You're wasting your whole purpose of incarnating here to begin with. And especially if you're not dealing with your own shit, because it's not even just about you. That is perpetuating your own suffering, absolutely, but it's also bleeding out and infecting all of your behaviors at a subconscious level. And you're also perpetuating slavery and chaos for all the people around you. And that's why we have this state of slavery and mental illness and depression that we live in this world. That has taken, as an emergent property, has taken into the macro, because it's starting there at that individual level, because people aren't going within, they're not looking at their own shadow, their own false beliefs, and trying to weed those out. I was reminded recently of this old concept I've been going back through old Wizard Factory episodes and harvesting clips to post as shorts. And I came across something that I said in an old episode about being the gardener of your own consciousness. And a gardener, first of all, he has care for his space. His heart is in it, right? Or her. That is your space. And no one else is going to see to it like you will. So if you just don't care, if you let it go to shit, the weeds are going to take over. All the good plants are going to die. It's just a mess. And that's the state of most people. But stepping into that role of like self-stewardship, right, through that care principle, and meticulously, day after day, hour after hour, you know, going through, sifting through, pulling out weeds that are choking off your life force, and feeding the aspects that are going to bear fruit, right? To feed you, to nourish you, to grow you.
Well said, dude. Yeah, absolutely. You know, to quote Manly P. Hall, he said, humanity's problems are in common, but the solution is individual. And this is where we create change, right? It's an individual process, and the individuals make up the whole, the collective consciousness, the aggregate. So it's so important. And this is why the great work is the internal work is first and ongoing. It's not like you reach a certain point and then, okay, I did it, I accomplished it, move on. That's not how it works. It's an ongoing process, just like a garden. There's upkeep, right? And that constant care that you need to,
Never stops.
it never stops. Exactly. So yeah, man, you touched on some great stuff. It's interesting, the Agent Smith, and related to that article. That article is using it almost starts off with obviously the appeal to emotion, but the inversion principle of flipping reality. Everything that person was saying in the beginning is complete. It's inverted to how things really are. So it's fascinating, the tactics that these people use, and the social engineers, they understand this. I mean, this is their whole purpose, is to invert reality. So absolutely, the individual work must come first, and it's ongoing, man.
Yeah. And so taking it back to that symbolism again, it's about connecting with yourself, being constantly self-reflecting. I mean, not once, but it's an ongoing process, because any given one of your beliefs, or something that you're, and as we know via the trivium, your beliefs is what you're actually operating in the world based off. So if one of your beliefs is off, then every action that's based on that belief is going to be tainted as well. And so what that ties into this whole allegory that we're working with here is that any given one of your beliefs could be something that's getting triggered out like a program, that .exe enter, and then suddenly you're an agent for the system. Suddenly, you open your mouth or you take an action, you're serving the system, you're serving the slavery system in some way. That alone, just that awareness, that realization, should be enough to make you take this shit seriously, right? That's a big responsibility. And regardless whether you think you have it or you don't, you do. It's on you. And if you don't think you do, then chances are that you're part of the problem. We'll just put it that way, because your ignorance, your ignorance of it, your apathy, you're pushing it aside or shirking it, as I like to say, you're a shirker, is pretty much guaranteeing that what you're putting out is trash, and that you're not only not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. You are contributing. You're an agent of the matrix. Just come out and say it like that.
Exactly. And Agent Smith, who can he not affect? The ones that are unplugged, that are connected to reality, right? We can use that as an allegory of nature, of the realm of the real, right? That Agent Smith can only go into and affect those that are still plugged in, tapped in, that have those erroneous artificial belief systems, like you said, the pain points, those trauma centers where that's where the virus is. So looking at like the pandemic, right? I mean, the real virus is a mind virus. It's a belief system, the belief in human authority, and all these others that stem from that as well, which really is just the abdication of responsibility, of sovereignty and nature, detached from nature, that which is, and creation. So yeah, man, well said. Well said.
So, what other aspects can we look at in regards to this idea?
Well, I think it's important to know, Rodney mentioned this as well, that right now is a great opportunity to go within, but also to do the one great work, to influence and inspire others. It's definitely not a great awakening. I call it a great awareness, which is absolutely opportunity for people. But I think things are going to spice up pretty soon. I mean, the next dialectic is right around the corner. So when we're talking about controlled opposition, again, you need to first understand yourself and how to think, but also look at these people and what they stand for. That's the kicker. I mean, even alternative journalists, I mean, you could talk about the effects all you want, and some of that's good because those are that aids into the awareness category. But if you're not talking about natural law, the causal factors in some form or fashion, statism, right? True freedom, then you are Agent Smith. You are part of the problem.
And having that, it has to be your anchor in your actual process of weeding out your garden. That has to be the operating system that you're coming from, because that is the most foundational level. It's like if your foundation is wrong, and like if you're building a skyscraper and the foundation is all cracked and crooked, every single floor you try to build on top of that is just going to get worse and worse and worse until it gets so tall it's just going to topple over. So especially if you're someone who has stepped in or is even thinking about stepping into a role such as a content creator, somebody that's trying to put these ideas forth, first of all, these first principles need to be first. Principle literally means first. So as I say, if they're not coming first, they ain't your principles. So that needs to be where every piece of content that you make needs to be pointing back to that one thing. And you can go out to the fringe and like add different nuances to it, but always bringing it back to that one thing, because that should be that. I mean, if you're putting that out there, you're also laying the foundations for the minds of the people that you may influence. You're being a good steward to their incubation of consciousness as well. You got to make sure you're helping them build on firm foundation, or else their building's going to topple over, and it's so on and so forth. So keeping that the main thing, and then using that as like your what's that, like what you're using to decode, it's like a key or something, um the master key for deciphering the code of every other belief that you're holding in. You're using that as the main filter. Like, is this compatible with natural law,
Mm.
cause and effect, the law of freedom? As freedom increases, morality increases, or vice versa. As morality decreases, so does freedom. If something that you're touting as truth is in conflict with that, well, you know where the discrepancy lies, because you keep the first thing the first thing. You keep the main thing the main thing. And that's going to be like your North Star, basically, for navigating this landscape of truth. Like the article even said, we're awash with too much information. You need a North Star. You need something that's going to keep you grounded and help you tell heads from tails when navigating this stuff. So especially, yeah, like if you're trying to teach others, it's even more important that you're sticking to first principles, and that your process of weeding your garden, it's ongoing. Because you can weed your garden once, but if you just say, oh, one and done, it's good, and then you leave it, you come back in a month and you don't have a garden. You've just got a mashed up pile of shit, you know. And then that's what you're putting out. That's what you're creating from, because it's always there. It's your garden, no matter whether you take care of it or not. And that's what you're operating from. That's what you're creating from, for your life, for the people that you care about, your family, your friends, and just your average, your fellow human family, even strangers. It all is contributing to the whole. Karma works like um, pollution, or clean air. It doesn't have, pollution is painting it in a negative thing, but it's like having clean air versus polluting. um, if you're polluting, like it starts filling up the space around you. And then if everyone is operating from that same mindset, then everyone is thinking, oh well, everyone, it's not my problem. Just like my small footprint isn't enough to make a big change. But that is the thing that adds up, and then suddenly all the air is poison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. Good. Well said. Socrates had the trinity of knowledge. Is it true? Is it moral? And is it useful? Now, is it true? That obviously takes, the trivium process of truth discovery, right? That takes some time. Having your 0 point on morality. Is it moral? Do they have the right to do this? Do they have the right to lock us down, right? That's a good 0 point because it involves its action and interacting with other people. I mean, what's more fundamental than that, right? Fundamental is foundational, the foundation of mind. That's what the word actually means. So first principles, like you said, is so important. And the garden, right? I mean, natural law, since it corresponds to reality and to the self, right? It is the substrate of creation. So what you plant in that is like you said, it's going to dictate if you're going to have a fertile garden or a polluted garden. So it's vital. It's really important.
And I saw this comment here by Iggy. Pull this up. It says, the issue I see is that most people are sheeple. And, yeah, that's a fair point, of course. And so, I mean, understanding natural law is the most important thing. But I guess as a prerequisite to that, you have to be willing to, I mean, I'd say sovereignty even as a foundational level below that, because you have to even acknowledge, like understand your own sovereignty to then be able to be willing to accept and operate within the true and legitimate authority of natural law. It is the one true authority. Everything else is, comes back to your own personal sovereignty. So this mindset of being a sheeple, that is a bigger problem, because they're still clinging to either programs and beliefs that were instilled and installed in them and never questioning that. And then from there, the fear is what perpetuates that and keeps them stuck there, because they're too afraid to venture out to actually think for themselves, to actually question and say, oh, maybe I'm responsible for determining what I can verify is true or not, to the best of my human abilities, of course. Let's not get in the weeds, as many people do when talking about truth, that we're saying that you can know everything or be 100% right about anything. That's not the point. The point is, what's the alternative? If you're taking things at blind faith, not only are you accepting that people are fallible and ideas can be fallible too, but then you're also adding a second layer of fallibility, because you're outsourcing that to another person who you may not even really should be trusting to begin with, who probably don't have your best interests in mind. So like we talked about earlier, you have to put yourself first and understand nobody's going to care for you more than you can. And nobody is obligated to care for you and serve you and have your best interest in mind than you are. And so if you're putting that off to someone else, that is a slave mentality. That is being a sheeple. So it has to come first, to like taking that responsibility onto your own shoulders. That's just, basically growing up. It's becoming a spiritual adult. Is like, okay, like it's time to question everything that I've been taught from a young age, and that's part of the process, right? Like, even as a parent, not that I'm a parent, but I'm saying as a parent, a person would need to instill beliefs and ideas into their children because they're literally physiologically and mentally incapable of having the life experiences, having the deeper understandings of how things are operate in the world. That's why it is your responsibility as a parent to steward their minds, to install the proper software as an operating system to begin the journey. But even it as such, and you're doing the best that you can by them, there is going to come a time where they're of age, the age of reason, where it's healthy for them to begin questioning even those good things that you've taught them. And if you've done a good job, then they'll come back full circle, even if they have to venture out and make a few mistakes, to go, you know what, dad was right, mom was right about that. And now I understand. I don't just know it or believe it, I understand it. And that's a far more empowered place of personal gnosis. And that's what we're getting at to begin with, rather than just staying in that child stage of just accepting what you're told, trusting, that just is what it is, and not even daring to venture out and test these things in the grand experiment of life, of reality itself. So I mean, I love this stuff, man. It's so powerful.
Yeah, man. That's a good point that you brought up too about the parenting aspect, right? And I think parents need to understand too, when your children get to that age of reason, it's good not to have all the answers. In fact, it would be better if you promoted discovery together. Like, I don't know. Let's go find out. And then that gives you an opportunity to promote the trivium and to gain information. Now with, public schooling and all this kind of stuff, it's just it's this is what indoctrination means, right? To speak into. They're constantly getting the answers, or they're just getting rhetoric information from a perceived authority, and they're just taking it as is. Absolutely. I mean, this is why the why stage is so important for kids. Promote that shit. Promote it. Let your kids know that asking why and questioning everything is good and healthy, but also give them the tool sets on how to discover truth as well. So that's really important.
I love that, because that's how you truly empower your child. And I just love that we're getting into conscious parenting, even though that wasn't like our original intention with this talk. Will, that's something that is one of your main fortes that you love to focus on, and it really is applicable in so many ways. When you're talking about mindsets, it's like no matter where you're at in your journey, you're still dealing with and operating from things that happened to you as a child, things you were taught, traumas that you may have had, or positive good parenting and upbringing that's actually still serving you to this day, regardless of if you're 20 or 85, that's still a part of your life. So regardless of what transformations you can go through in life and the work that you're doing on yourself, which of course you should be, no matter what, whether you had a good childhood, a bad childhood, whatever, but regardless, it's just worth noting that despite any of that, the impact that is going to carry on throughout your entire life is so important. So it needs to be a big part of, especially if you are like becoming a parent or actively being a parent, it should be apparent that this is the most important thing that you need to be focusing on, because that's going to be setting themselves up for success or a lot of pain and failure throughout the rest of their life. I also wanted to really quickly share something you said. Reminded me of a quote that I wrote that I haven't actually posted yet, but it's very, very fitting to this. And I just love this idea. It says, when your child asks you a question that you don't know the answer to, there is so much power in telling them, I don't know, let's find out, because it positions yourself as a perpetual student rather than the authority on knowledge, and models humility, honesty, and curiosity to your child.
100%. Absolutely, man. Yeah, well said. The freedom mindset will always prevail over the tyrant mindset when it comes to children. Meaning if parents are acting like a tyrant, your child is going to move away from you, right? This is what the so-called rebellious years are, which is really just, the misplaced trust, the lack of trust, and rights, natural rights that parents, don't do with their children. So then their children seek this in other places, and unfortunately, this is schooling, culture, which is a big one, the main one I would say, which is culture is just the mouthpiece of tyranny nowadays, modern culture. So it's good to understand that, the slave mindset, that scarcity mindset has been epigenetically instilled in us through generations and generations. Everything that we can talk about, even that article, right? You can see the religious fervor and dogma placed in there. This is what blind belief is. It comes from somewhere, and this is that religious mindset.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to mention really quick to everyone viewing here, first of all, thank you. I love you. I'm so glad you're still here with us, really enjoying this conversation. Again, if you are too, definitely hit that like button if you haven't yet. Help, support the content. And also, we're getting close to moving into the next segment where we're going to be taking calls. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the invite link into the comments. You should see that there. I'm going to pin it. And if you're interested in being on the show, you can click that link now. That'll take you backstage. And then once we move to that section, I will pick someone at random and bring you on, and you can ask your question there. If you prefer text, do me a favor and type question in all caps with a colon, and then put your question after that. That way my eyes can isolate that from the other comments down below. So definitely looking forward to chatting with some of you, taking your calls. And Will, I guess let's continue on with the conversation. Do you have any other thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, I did. I want to talk about pain and suffering, right? There is a difference, right? Suffering is when pain becomes unbearable. And fear, like you were saying earlier, this is the amplifier. This is why they're constantly bombarding us with, this fear-based mind control and these dialectics. So this is what gets people fragmented in their psyche, which creates a disassociation from reality. And it gets, when you're in that fear mindset, of course, you're in fight, flight, freeze. You're in survival mode. You're operating from base consciousness, the reptilian mindset. So you're limited. Your awareness is limited. So going back to taking care of yourself, whenever, and this has happened to me a few times, right? When you're getting into the fear-based dialectics, whether it's researching the effects or whatever, it has that effect on you. So you have to take care of yourself. You could do that obviously by the fundamentals: diet, clean water, air, sun, grounding, all this kind of stuff. I think this stuff is overlooked a lot from people. But pay attention to, like what Rodney said, your habits, your ritual, spiritual, right? That spiral ritual, that your day-to-day habits, it's vital. I mean, I keep a journal, and I try to stay diligent on that as much as possible, where I'm writing down behaviors and moods and stuff like that I go through on a day-to-day basis. And that gives you that observer effect, the witness of your own actions and thought processes. And it's definitely powerful, but that's got to be solid, especially nowadays when we are trying to, speak truth and influence and inspire other people. We need to, that's got to be activated within us.
Yeah. You were talking about pain and suffering. Did you want to expand on that a bit?
Sure. Yeah. That's the gateway to insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different outcome because you're in that fear-based mentality, right? Where you have that limited awareness. So you're just focused on your base needs. But it's so funny. I mean, you look at government, people still voting like it's actually going to create change. That is insanity. That's completely insanity. Looking at these institutions, quote unquote scientism, like actual change is being caused there. No, it's all we live in an insane society. So that it's good to understand where that comes from. And this is why I was talking about, influence and inspiration, but also, being the work, becoming the work, being activated. Because when people are in this fear-based mindset, most of the time, they're not going to actually listen to what you're saying. They're going to observe what you do. And that can be powerful. So, I mean, for instance, you're throwing all this rhetoric at them, whatever it may be, right? But yet you're not taking care of yourself. Then that's gonna be more prominent to them. They're gonna see that. So it's a holistic approach, right? Something that you talk about a lot. You gotta have your bases covered. The foundation must be firm.
Yeah, even at a subconscious level, they're going to recognize that discrepancy. Even if they're not even fully consciously aware of it, they're going to be hearing the words that are coming out of your mouth, but energetically, you're putting off this blueprint of dysfunction and pain and suffering and avoidance, and that they're going to associate those two. Like people, I mean, this whole "don't shoot the messenger" thing. Well, I mean, it's an aspect of human psychology, especially if you're not being aware of it. That's just how the brain works, is you're going to associate the message with the messenger, the person, giving you this advice. Especially, we talked about this last time, of like, if some guy is trying to give you advice on finances and how to be successful and be rich and stuff, but he's always asking for money and broke as hell and looks like trash, then why are you going to take advice from that person? Well, likewise, if somebody doesn't have their own life in order, if they're not being a responsible magician, a wizard of their own, environment and life and circumstances and all of that, and they're sitting there telling you about how they have the secret to freedom and, like it's this whole empowered lifestyle and all this kind of stuff, and you're just thinking, well, that doesn't look so great from where I'm standing. Why should I take advice from you? Again, even if it's not conscious, that's going to be happening like at a very like baseline subliminal level.
This is why the Socratic method is extremely powerful, and it works really well. And I've had direct experience with that, right? Because you're asking questions to stimulate critical thinking within the recipient. So you're taking them to a place of self-awareness. It still might be limited, but you're asking general, simplified questions. Where do our rights come from, right? Where does government get the right to do this, to do that? Where do they get the right to lock people down, et cetera, all that kind of stuff. That stimulates critical thinking, and that gets them into, activating the neocortex, where they're the higher order thinking, which is what makes us human. And they start thinking about that because you're trying to point out the internal contradictions, which this is the big thing. Even in that article, right? There's a contradiction, a constant contradiction within society and these institutions.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I think this is a good place to maybe wrap up this topical discussion here and move into some questions. I just saw someone popped into the backstage area. So,
Sweet.
if you can hear me, stand by. We'll get to you in just a moment. Will, this has been an awesome conversation. And of course, want you to stick around for the Q&A segment. But I mean, wow, just really profound stuff that we're getting into here. I love the overall message of empowerment, self-reflection. I mean, these are things that are going to come up again and again because these truths are universal. And when you're talking about causal factors and getting to the very root of the problem, it's like you could talk about a different problem every day of the week and make for a very like lively and interesting kind of flow of different concepts to entertain you, but it's always going to come back to these, the root of every problem is nearly always the same, especially when you're looking at just the condition, the human condition here.
Yeah, great combo, man. Especially, like what Rodney was touching on with the Saturnian and the Piscean illusion energy, right? So, I mean, controlled opposition, staying grounded, empowerment, focusing on causal factors. This is all vital currently, right now. Absolutely.
Yeah, and most of all, your own illusion, because you can point the finger at them and the media and this and that of their trickery all day long, but the greatest crime and the greatest tragedy is you lying to yourself to hide from some pain or something. I mean, there's reasons why this happens. This isn't just random. It's all human psychology, and even the bad things, even the negative things, it's important to understand, like, this is what the occult is all about. Is like, there's a reason the dark occult is a thing, and that actually is effective too. Is that even when you're talking about a bad outcome, there's a reason for everything. This is the natural law lesson. It's like, no, it doesn't matter if you understand it or not, or if it seems insane. Like, this is an idea we use for like chaos or insane, is that there's just absolutely no rhyme or reason. And that is the case. Some things are just suffering and chaos for the sake of that. But there, even to the things that make no sense, there's almost always some kind of explanation, even if it's not a good one. And of course, it doesn't justify what's happening. There's a point of understanding that you can reach by, like, saying, okay, people cause harm, but oftentimes that's an extension of the pain that they themselves are experiencing. And even keeping in mind, like, these are all human beings. Even if they're vile, even if they're destructive, they're still human beings that have needs and pain and desires and feelings, and these things are all playing a part in how things are playing out. Each person's individual choices that they're making. Every choice is driven by some sort of need. So it's like, even if they're not choosing the best way to get their needs met, understanding that is the always the reason behind everything that anyone does. Anyway,
Yeah.
so all right.
Excellent.
Let's get into some questions. We've got one person backstage. Again, anyone listening, if you want to get on and ask a question, that link is pinned in the comments. I'd like to at least have a few to go through. Or if not, of course, you can drop a question in the comments as well. But let's go ahead and move on to that section. So let's start off with James here, who's backstage, and let's bring you on here. James, can you hear us? Their screen is black, so I'm not sure if they haven't activated anything.
You might have to unmute your mic if you just want audio.
Yeah. James, if you can hear us, you're live, and we're waiting for a response or a question. All right. Well, I'll put you back here. We'll see if any change happens there. But anyone else have any questions you want to drop in the chat?
I want to say something real quick about the allegory that we brought up, right, with Agent Smith. Neo, you can't force people to wake up, right? This is why in the allegory, the movie, they don't unplug people because they're not ready. You can't force people to wake up. But even Neo, where does he create change from? He goes into the Matrix to create change as well. So that's a powerful allegory, and Trinity representing care for humanity and stuff like this. So it's really easy to get in that negative mindset of, fuck everyone. If, all the sheep, if they don't get it, maybe next lifetime, that kind of stuff. But that's not helping us, right? Because we're all interconnected in this system. So we need to obviously do the individual work, but our duty is to inspire and help elevate other people to awaken.
That's a great point. It's bringing to mind one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite movies, which incidentally I quoted last show as well. The movie Cloud Atlas. The lady, I forget her name, the main like kind of religious figure in the film. She says when she's being interrogated that from womb to tomb we are bound by others, and that is kind of a big theme of the whole movie. It's basically showing you there's all these different characters that existed through different James is messaging me, says he's getting activity for his mic and he's unmuted. You know what? I've had this issue happen before. It could be something to do with your browser. Can you make sure real quick that you're using an updated, the most current version of your browser, because that can sometimes cause issues with the interface. But currently, I'm not seeing. Let's see, James, if you try to say something. He just popped out. Okay, maybe he's restarting or something. But from womb to tomb, we're bound by others. So sure, you could say fuck everyone else. That's real easy to do, but it's not at all contributing to a solution. And regardless if you say fuck that person or not, they still exist in this world along with you, the same reality that we're all co-inhabiting. And this is the ultimate lesson for humanity. This is what we're here to figure out: how to coexist in the same reality without violating each other. And if someone doesn't get it, they're part of the problem that does affect the human condition.
Exactly.
So, that's a bit of a cop-out to say that. It's not that you're solely responsible for everyone else, but you can't just ignore or just pretend like anybody who doesn't quote unquote get it just doesn't exist, because they do. And they, in the aggregate, is what's literally creating the human condition. James, you're on the air. Still not hearing or seeing anything from you, so I'm not sure what the issue is here. Sorry about that. Obviously, the link is working, as we've already had other guests on. So, but if you did have a question and it's not working, you can drop that into the chat here, and we can answer it that way. But first, we have this question by Iggy that I pulled up here. It says, "Riddle me this. What does it say about a person who keeps voting and believing in the system, all the while being betrayed over and over again by politicians? How to win a war with those kind of people?" Well, that's hard. I mean, I don't know that framing it as a war is the most productive way to look at it. Remember, you're at war with their false beliefs, not the individual themselves. We're a human family. We're not at war with each other. We're at war with ignorance. So that would be the first thing that I would say, is to shift the frame that you're operating in, and not seeing them as your enemy, seeing the belief in authority as your enemy, and how you can help them and save them from this false belief, much like you would try to help a friend beat cancer that they have, because it is very much a mental cancer that we're dealing with here. First of all, cultivate care for your fellow human being, and recognize that's hurting them just as much as it's hurting you by perpetuating the system. So Yeah, I mean, it depends on, do you know this person personally, or are you talking about just how, the average person? Because certainly that's a bigger undertaking than any one person can just, solve on their own. Like, a podcast like this or something isn't necessarily going to just poof change everybody's minds and they stop voting, or something like that. So I mean, sure, have individual conversations with people, one mind at a time kind of thing. You could start a podcast or start some type of show similar to this, or, of course, in your own way, in your own unique voice, in a way that me or Will could never do, because we're not you, and you have your own unique gifts and perspectives and things to bring to the table. But beyond that, I mean, there's really not much you can do. It's like, how do you, like, the system is much bigger than any one person, and it takes a concerted effort, just as, you know the masses of people created society. So it's going to take masses of people to change society into something different, if that makes sense. One person can influence that bigger picture, much like one person joins in a choir of other voices that creates a big, loud sound. But one person alone isn't going to have that same effect. So, be a voice in the bigger picture, be on the right side of history, but also don't expect that you're going to single-handedly change and save the world, and then get frustrated and defeated when you don't, or when that doesn't happen. Will, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I agree with that, and it took me a while, and again, I think it's an ongoing process to kind of cultivate a certain level of care, acceptance, patience, but and that's not negating that the harm, the injustice that's doing, right? Each emotion is for a reason and can be utilized as like your toolkit, your tool set. So it's important to understand, the situation. Like, are you talking to a family member, or are you are you actually, you're direct in an injustice where harm is being caused, and then getting mad and getting angry and maybe doing something about it, calls into play. But just communicating to people, you have to understand, as soon as um, someone feels like they're attacked, they're not thinking whatsoever, right? The nervous system activates, clinches up, um, pupils dilate, shoulders tense, they stop thinking, and they're not listening to you because they feel threatened, right? So, and that's their conditioning and programming, because you that could be the reason why you're upset or coming at a certain angle. Definitely could be justified, absolutely. But understanding these tool sets, this is why I always talk about the Socratic method. Larkin Rose and Amanda, they have Candles in the Dark, which is pretty much the Socratic method as well. This is, how to talk to people about, true freedom and our rights being violated. So it definitely has an impact. I've used this out on the streets, and it works. It works very well. I found definitely some success with it. But if you're not grounded within yourself, then, if you're a hammer, then everyone's a nail,
Hmm.
as the saying goes. Do you know what I'm saying? So, there's definitely a balance that needs to be struck within yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenging one for sure. So it's a valid question, because it's part of that natural process. When you start waking up, you start understanding the real roots of the problems. It's a very common stage that people go through, of like, okay, well, now I know this. I can't go back to sleep, but now what do I do? I'm just one person. You feel helpless. And I think that's where a lot of people end up very stuck, is that in between place of knowing and can't, like, go back to sleep, but also feeling so helpless that it makes them really bitter and miserable, because it's just like, oh, the world's all shit now, and like, there's nothing any of us can do, and that they kind of just fall into this very defeated and victim mindset, which is not good for anyone. So I mean, the main thing is just, like, don't ignore the world. We just talked about how that's not helping anything either. But at the same time, don't tie your sense of worth and power and all of that directly to your ability to single-handedly defeat the machine. That's not how that works. What you can do is focus on your own life and creating as much freedom as possible within that. Because as Will mentioned earlier as well, the best way to teach people about freedom is to show them what it looks like. Don't tell them about, I mean, you can tell them about it, but the most effective way to actually get through to people is show them by your fruits that you're actually living by, and being like, yeah, this is possible. And I can show you how to do it too. Anybody can do it. That's the most powerful thing that you could do, I think.
Yeah,
I
for
see
sure.
James is giving it another stab here. I do see he has a little J this time, so maybe it'll work. Let's see. James, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Hey,
Can you hear me?
welcome
Hey,
to
Logan.
the
Hey,
show.
Will.
Hey,
You're
what's
live.
up, James?
Look,
You're live on the
persistence is the
Wizard
key.
Factory. Welcome.
Thank y'all. Thank you so much. I saw the I'm subscribed to your channel, by the way. Thank you for that. Thank you for telling people to hit the bell notification, because I saw that you were live, Logan, and I saw the title of your video. Everyone is Agent Smith until no one is. And maybe it's serendipitous, but I live in New York City, and this morning I parked on the street, and you know how because of the whole scamdemic, they have like outdoor seating, like booths and everything, and they're going around like dismantling them. But there was a sign that says opposite street parking, so I guess the sanitation department could come and sweep the street. Well, I didn't see that, even though I paid for my parking ticket. And sure enough, a meter maid walked up, and right when he got there, he wouldn't even let me move my car. He wrote me a ticket. And
Damn.
try having the conversation. Look, and I've learned this. Sometimes you have to learn the hard way. I think what both of you are doing, other people in the, I guess, maybe in the anarchist community and the freedom community and the volunteerism community are doing is great. The battlefield is the battlefield of ideas, and you are both on this battlefield together with others, kind of shouldering that responsibility. And I mean, I have my own channel, and I'm trying to break into that. I like to write, but most people, if you're not in a big city, you don't have these regular interactions. And try having the conversation of, do you feel that, while this is happening to you, do you believe in karma? Do you know that karma exists? Are there going to be consequences for your actions, for you stealing from other people? I've had 15-minute conversations, 20-minute conversations with these guys. This is the first time I've had this happen to me, right? Mm-hmm. But it's completely different. Like, there's the battlefield of ideas of what you're doing, right? And you're out there. I think the only way you're going to get through to people is through the internet and what you're doing now. You're not gonna. I've heard other people say this, and I absolutely agree with it. You're not going to convince somebody on the street, because like trying to explain natural law to somebody on the street is like trying to explain the theory of relativity to a goldfish. It's just not going to get through, And what is both of your opinions and takes on that? Have you had these experiences of frustration where the level of consciousness is so low that you're having very basic conversations? Obviously, there's the lack of wanting to associate with somebody else, particularly the other party on the other end of the conversation. But I just wanted to get your take on the people who are basically assimilated by Agent Smith. And my take is, how in the film, Agent Smith goes from different characters, different people. Once it's the lady in the kitchen who throws the knife at Keanu Reeves. Then it's the guy, the woman with the groceries, and then next to the little girl. Yeah. But my take is, once they're assimilated, they're pretty much stay that way. Like, it's hard to get them out of that Agent Smith. They just stay that way in the real world, in our reality that we're living. And I'm not saying it's like impossible, but I'm saying it's very unlikely you're going to get them out of that low golem mind state where they're just not, where they don't make the decision, this is not good livelihood, I'm doing acts of evil because I have a costume on. I'm sorry, I've been rambling, but what are your thoughts on all those themes and dynamics? Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Logan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said it well. And then the first thing to keep in mind is to keep your expectations low. Understand the odds are probably not in your favor of just having one conversation with an agent of the state, especially, and expecting to just, you know what, you're right, my whole life is a lie, and I think I'm going to go quit my job now. It's like, That's probably not going to happen. Okay, so
Yeah.
setting your expectations low. It's kind of like the whole George Carlin take of like, you got front row seats to the freak show, and be an active participant in action, but also as far as your emotional investment, treat it more like a spectacle, like you're just an observer watching things unfold. I think that's a really good way to kind of keep your sanity more intact without getting too attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
The other thing is you have to speak to people where they're at. So if you are going to make any kind of dent whatsoever on their psyche, you can't just dive right into your expert level of rhetoric, dropping all these words and philosophical concepts and stuff like that, because it's just going to
They're not ready.
it's
They're
going to
not
go
ready for
out
that.
the ear and out the other, and it's not
Yeah.
going to mean anything to them, especially if you're trying to make any kind of impact on a person that literally their job, their livelihood is dependent on them not coming to understand what you're trying to tell them.
Yes.
Because that would mean, oh, well, now I have some really big decisions to make. Now I have to figure out a different way to feed my family. Yeah, that's a lot to put on a person. Of course, that is their responsibility, but showing them that, holding that mirror up, very few people are going to willingly take an honest look into that mirror. But what last thing that I'll say about this, and then I'll let Will respond, is just keeping in mind the consciousness level of the person you're speaking to. Keep it simple. Imagine you're not trying to explain algebra to a kindergartner, right? You're trying to explain ABCs. And that is the best chance that you have at actually planting a seed. Now, and that's what I think your actual objective should be, is to not have one conversation and have them totally change their mind right then and there on the spot. Your best shot of actually helping them is saying the right thing in such a simple way that they can understand, that actually penetrates their calcified ego and psyche in a way that it just clicks and it plants that seed. And maybe that seed is going to be there and start sprouting and growing over weeks and months. And then who knows, maybe it takes 2 years, and finally that person quits their job because they can't unhear something that you said that wasn't like this life-changing event in and of itself, but it says something to them that connected with them in such a way that they just kept hearing it on repeat in their mind as they're going about their day and extorting people, and they can't reconcile their actions with this new idea that you just put in their heads. And that's the best shot I think you could ever have of just planting that seed and hoping that someday maybe it'll grow and be viable. Will?
Yeah, James, great comment, great question. Logan, you did a great job. I look at it like this, like it's a top-down system, meaning the people that have a higher awareness are going to influence the ones that are just below them, and it trickles down, meaning that, like Logan, you were saying, you can't just go and just drop a huge, vast amount of knowledge on someone that has a low level of awareness. This is why the tech is so important. You said you have a channel, James. That's awesome. This is where we're at, because it's a magnetic field, meaning as you put your content out there, those that are at that level of awareness or seeking that level of awareness will radiate to you. They'll be attracted to you. And then hopefully we want to create more content creators, more people using their voice to speak out. They will do the same. So we're creating the ripple effect. Now, I go out on the streets, not often, but I have done that in the past. That was more beneficial for my own communication skills. It was really good with that because you're face to face with people. It's more of like a public speaking dynamic. But you're right. Just interacting with people on the street in your day-to-day life, it's very low expectations for sure. Something that I like to do in my work is I like to simplify the profound. Guarantee you, actually, we know this. The majority of people do not know what a right is. The majority of people do not even know what true freedom is. Maybe even people watching this show, right? You have to ask yourself those questions. Well, what is freedom? Not what your perceived definition is that you've been raised with or what you think it is. So simplifying these big ideas, these concepts, even nature, like what is nature? Nature is creation. It's not man-made. What is a right? So you get my drift, but you control what you can do within your own life. You make content. Using the tech is important. This is how we can amplify the voice of truth and the message to not reach 5 people on your day-to-day adventures to hundreds of thousands, potentially, right? So we can amplify that message drastically. So that's where I would recommend putting the majority of your focus is your grammar and getting the type of message that you want to propagate and learning the tech so you can be efficient at getting that message out.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with both of you, and I am aware of a mutual teacher that you have, and I've learned from the same teacher, so I totally understand what you're saying. I'm not putting all my eggs in this street level basket. To me, that the system has already taken the streets. The system has already taken the 3D world, and so we're kind of relegated to the internet, and our goal is to reach as many minds as we possibly can to affect change in the world, to be the change that we want to see in the world. But if you go to a place like New York City, where I live, you can just see it as plain as day how taken people are, like completely taken, and just the slavery that people live under here and just willingly accept it's obnoxious. It's offensive to a free spirit, a free being, to anybody really. But no, I totally agree with both of you. Thank you for what both of you are doing. I am, putting forth my own effort as well. I don't have as big of a platform as you guys, not yet, but I'm going to continue to put out content. I'm doing writing, so I write science fiction. I'm writing my first novel right now, that kind of gets into the theme of natural law and really explores those dynamics and how what human freedom would look like if we just allow things to continue to go where they're going now with transhumanism, AI, all these different things that are just basically enslaving the human race. At some point someone's going to have to say no, no to government, no to different forms of religions that are existing in the world, that have existed in the world and continue to exist. But yeah, I know I'm totally on board, and I have my own channel, but I really appreciate what both of you are doing. I respect both of you greatly, and just thank you for giving me the time to speak with you during your live stream, Logan. Thank you so much. And nice to meet you, Will.
Thanks, James. It's a pleasure.
James, thank you for coming on, have the bravery to join in and have this discussion with us. Why don't you tell people where they can find your work?
Sure, absolutely. So my channel is Shadowworks Media. You can check me out on YouTube. I'm on different platforms. I need to upload some videos on Odyssey. I've got some uploads on Rumble. I'm on Instagram. I do some AI rendering through the Midjourney platform to try to explore some of these themes. Look, I'm not going to argue whether or not it's art or not, but you can actually make some really great images and some memes out of that.
I got the Midjourney bug myself. It's a really powerful piece of it's a tool, man.
It's a tool,
just like anything else.
Yeah, if you have a creative inkling,
the user.
If sometimes the way I use it, Logan, is simply put, I will if I get an idea or a concept or an image in my mind, I go with it and I just put it in a prompt and see what comes out. And if I can use it to kind of evoke a thought or an emotion from what we're trying to do, which is bring natural law to common sense knowledge to the streetwise level. But again, that's what we have to do on the internet. This is the battlefield right here, where both of you are and many others are. So thank you so much. I appreciate being able to speak with both of you. So
James, thank you as well, man. Have a great day, and see you next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Good for you, James. I mean, doing the work. This is great. I'm going to check out his channel and look forward to see his progress. I want to say something real quick too, because he was talking about New York City. When I was going out on the streets, we were going to San Francisco. So I know exactly what he's talking about. I mean, San Francisco and New York City, they're one and the same as far as level of awareness. And it was brutal at times. But what I discovered when my group and I were going out there several times, we actually found a subset within the city, the heart of the city, of freedom-minded people that all through the BS lockdowns, they were meeting in secret, and it was like 30 of them, right? And they were talking about freedom and rights and all this kind of stuff. And we kind of got hooked up with them, and I did a public speaking engagement for their group, and we're in communication with them even currently. So that was actually really surprising to me, and it actually gave me a little bit of hope. Even in these hotbed cities, right, there are people that align with freedom principles or have that freedom mindset. For me, those are the type of people that I want to reach. The ones that are completely closed up and calcified, really, really tough. But like you said, Logan, your expectations, knowing your demographic. I want my work, I want to try to reach the people that at least have freedom on the mind. Even if they need to, evolve that perception of what freedom is. Those are the type of people I want to reach, because they're at least receptive, and that's good for me.
Well said. And that's awesome that you have that firsthand experience of man on the streets here. Like that. It's easy to talk about this stuff, but few people have actually put boots on the ground and gone and had real conversations with people. So that's great perspective that you have there from that experience. We have Chris Jansen backstage, so we're going to bring you on.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing?
To the show, man. How's it
What's
going,
up, my
brother?
brother?
It's going pretty well. Enjoying this conversation, and it's spurring thoughts and ideas in my mind, which I appreciate. I was thinking a lot about relationships. When you guys were talking about the work, doing the self work. It really comes down to, I think, and a lot of times, is relationships with other individuals. And outside of this online work, that's where I find personally the most difficulties, when I notice having a little trouble dealing with relationships and emotions, is when, that's when the rubber hits the road, so to speak. And that's the test of where we're at in ourself. And I think, I was curious to see what you guys have to say on that subject.
Yeah, I'll go first if you don't mind.
Sure.
That's a great point, because as humans, bringing in the correspondence principle, we are here to what? To evolve our relationship with consciousness, with divine, to gain discipline, to evolve consciousness. So bringing that on the micro, of course, it's about relationships with each other, individuals, all beings, all life.
Yeah.
So
little G gods, each of us.
Little G gods, little C creators. Exactly. So that's vital. And the social engineers, they play on this, kind of what we were going back earlier about, fear-based consciousness. They want that division. They want people, to put their head in the sand, to be nihilists, to throw the towel in, all that kind of stuff. That energy needs to be transmuted, that righteous anger, and used as fuel for the harm and the injustice that's going on, and to build our relationships with each other. Because what we're talking about, I mean, it's specks. The social engineers, they're just specks compared to the totality of humanity. So we have the numbers. We just need the mindset.
Right. Chris, can you just briefly rephrase your question again?
Well, after what Will said, it makes me want to add this. when I try to envision the world I want to see of people respecting each other's natural born rights, it requires a large percentage of the population of other people around us coming to these realizations for us all to enjoy it. Because as we know, it's the totality of all people in the aggregate having immoral behavior that's leading to this condition we're in. And that's the importance of why we're doing these things online and why we're speaking out to people. But the masses of people we know and relate with, they don't know what we're talking about with this natural law thing, or they don't agree with it. And I think personally, what I've noticed and what holds people back in a lot of ways is the fear of, we can't do that. We don't have the ability. They're looking at things in this really grandiose way, like the only way to change things is on the big scale with governments and stuff, and I'm in agreement. I think you and I and Will have all said this, that we're in agreement that it's about individual relationships and how we treat each other. And I find myself trying to convince people that that's really like what I called the rubber hits the road. That's really how we prove in the real world how we're becoming a better person, and how we're doing the self-work is how we relate with the people around us. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. What that was bringing up for me, that hit me really hard, is a profound realization of, this is so indicative of the disconnect between the average person and nature, actual natural law, the way things operate in the universe naturally. Like, this is, for those listening, most of but we're not just talking about birds and trees and stuff you see when you go camping. We're talking about just non-man-made rules, the laws of creation, the way things operate here on this planet and anywhere in the universe. They're projecting this false and a paradigm that has been imposed on them from birth through an authoritarian construct of top-down influence and power. That is the way the world is run, from the from the family unit on the very small level, and which is a microcosm of the macro via government and other institutions. It's a top-down authoritarian model of power, where nature works the other way. It's grassroots. It begins at the micro level and goes up and out into that creates the macro. So think about, like, you have atoms, you have particles, you have atoms. Atoms come together to form chemicals. The compounds of chemicals create matter and different, material, which create objects, and then, so on and so forth. Taking it to the cellular level, like, there's no top-down external force that's making you a human being. What makes you a human being is all of your individual cells in your body that are working as one system that is a symbiotic system. All the cells in your body benefit from being part of the system. On their own, they would die. They don't have a way to get resources and nutrients that they need. Only through being a human body or any kind of biological being that is set up to actually work that system to make it beneficial for all, for being a part of that. And what do we call when a cell deviates from that? Cancer. That is that's the mental cancer that we're talking about. When an individual breaks away from natural law, they're not part of that system. They're not getting all the benefits of that being plugged into that grand natural system that begins at the bottom level of the individual and then is therefore manifest through higher levels of hierarchy, but in a beneficial, non-authoritarian form of hierarchy. This is another thing which we could do a whole talk on in and of itself, that I think is very important. People have this very negative idea of hierarchy because they're thinking of this top-down authoritarian version of it that's based in coercion and force rather than mutual cooperation and basically just a reasonable flow of masculine and feminine energies. I mean, there's it's a lot to
Harmony.
that, but yeah, harmony. Yeah,
That's the
symbiosis.
definition of harmony, right? From Latin harmonia, it means agreement or joining together. That's
Yes,
the definition of it. So what's the agreement on? The agreement is on creation, natural law, natural rights,
right.
common sense, or what should be.
So I know that was a long-winded answer, but all that to say, essentially, that there's a fundamental mindset difference in the person that's viewing the entire world through that lens of that top-down structure versus shifting into the naturalist mindset and seeing how it begins at the level that they're at as an individual, and then that creates in the aggregate the higher truths, the higher conditions.
Yeah, that's right on. And I guess too, my mind always wants to go to, like, especially when we talk about self-work, what are the actual practical things that people can do on a day-to-day basis to, make this difference, even though you can't see it affecting the whole world. You can see it affecting your own life and the life of those around you. And if you pay attention to relationships, like I'm saying, then you can kind of start to see this interconnectedness. When you change yourself, how people around you start to change and how your relationships with them change, which can be extremely difficult in a world of people that are buying into fatalism and authoritarianism, and their mindsets are all over the place. But if we're going to be an example, that means we need to have these relationships working well with people for them to say, oh, he's that guy that always talks about natural law, the one that helped me carry my bag just now. Why is he so nice if he doesn't believe in government? He's an anarchist. Why does he treat me so well? Right? Like, those are the questions we want people to be asking, not like they don't want to talk to you because you're always a dick and you always get mad and yell at them, and how are they ever going to want to listen to what we have to say? So I'm just saying, in practicality, a lot of times our relationships are the work for us to be the example, because no one really can see a world of freedom. We don't really have an example to show people how it would work in most cases, because we're all kind of imagining how it would be if we treated each other better. But no one has a real world example of a world that is totally free. None of us have lived there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I would add to what you were saying. And you're right. As far as human beings go, we don't have a real world example of freedom yet. In our day-to-day lives, most people interact voluntarily, right? Going to the grocery store, going to our hobbies, our works, et cetera, et cetera. There is duress and coercion there every day, just, driving down the street, right? Where someone's violating your natural rights to move upon the earth. The mentor for human beings is nature itself. We look at nature, the natural world, perfect order, symbiosis, harmony, abundance. This is the mentor that we need to strive for. So that when I think of freedom, I see nature, and of course, but this doesn't mean 100% security. That's not what freedom means, that you're going to be safe. This is what the social engineers and the dark occultists want to propagate. We'll keep you safe like the lion in the cage. You're going to get your food and your water, and that's it. But I don't want full safety. I want to live. And that implies, if you're living, implies you're going to die at some point, guaranteed. We all are going to die. So this is part of the learning process. So yeah, man, well, good points. Great points.
I want to add something to that too. And then we should probably think about winding this down as an episode and wrap it up. Loving this conversation. Absolutely. I could probably go on for a couple more hours, but like leave the listeners, wanting a little bit more for next week. Right. But what you were bringing up there really made me, I want to add a nuance to what you said about balance, symbiosis versus parasitism. That's been a theme coming up a lot, and it's very important. When you're looking at nature, parasitism is a thing, right? There's leeches, there's ticks, there's all these different parasitic beings that exist in nature. It's not to say like that's just as like from a natural perspective, these are just different dynamics that exist. The reason that this is important to look at is because we're human beings. We actually have the ability to observe nature through the animist mindset and see a difference. Be like, okay, this is symbiotic. This is good for, and even yourself removed from it, right? You're just observing an ecosystem that maybe you're not even a part of. You can see, okay, these different plants and animals are all existing in this ecosystem together. No one's taking too much. No one's exploiting anything. And they're all getting what they need, and they're just animals. They really just care about themselves and like surviving, which no fault of their own. That's the level of consciousness that they're at. But they are operating on instincts that allow them to coexist in that harmonic way, where they're not throwing the entire ecosystem out of balance, whereas a parasite is. And a human being has the ability to say, you know, this is parasitic, that's symbiotic, and the one is objectively good and the other one is not. And this is where being a steward of nature, right? If there's like a bunch of wild boars coming out, throwing a balance out of everything, damaging plants and killing animals and stuff like that, and you start cracking down on the population of those boars, you're actually being a steward of nature. You're helping the balance be maintained so that all the other creatures in that ecosystem have a chance to thrive and aren't just stomped out. This is what it means to be a human being. You are observing and making judgments. That's dirty, scary word. That's the divine masculine. Judgment is a good thing when it's actually aligned with truth. That's the key. I mean, that is the thing that makes all the difference, is having properly aligned, properly calibrated discernment and then acting on
Well said.
that.
Wheels are turning.
Yeah. Obviously we could go on all day with this.
Oh,
but
yeah, for sure.
Chris, thank you for coming on the show, man. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, appreciate it.
For sharing your thoughts, questions, and insights with us as well. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We're gonna wrap this up here. If you're not yet subscribed, please do so below. Click the bell. Don't worry about that algorithm that's going to suppress truth-based content. As our friend James said earlier, bypass that. If you click the bell, you will get the notification so that you're not relying on YouTube to show you what's good for you, right? You'll go directly to the source. So that is going to wrap up today's episode. Will, thank you so much for being a great guest and a great friend to me, and just an all-around awesome guy who is very good at speaking truth and making, simplifying the profound, as you said yourself.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you tremendously. Thank you to all the viewers. I'm proud of you for doing this live show. It's so badass. I'm excited to see where it goes in the future. And thanks for having me on.
You got it. Many more to come, man, and many more that you'll be a part of, I'm sure.
Excellent.
So tell everyone, where you're at and how they can find your awesome content as well, and what you're working on.
Yeah, right on. So you can go to my website, naturalfreedomleague.com. Lots of podcast interviews, presentations. You can actually go to my Linktree/Will Keller and get to all my social media sites. You can, ask me questions, email me. Highly recommend people check out my presentations, especially the one on freedom or conscious parenting. We have the FUNL. I'm a co-creator of the FUNL Conference, which is Freedom Under Natural Law. This will be the third conference. It's a free online event, 2 days. That's June 23rd and 24th. So right there on solstice. Of course, Logan, you're going to have a presentation there as well. We have some phenomenal presenters. You can go to freedomundernaturallaw.com and register. It's free. And Thanks again, Logan. Appreciate it, man.
You got it, man. Thanks, Will. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
And real quick, I see this comment here. Caught us right here at the end of the show, but I'm not going to let any opportunity to hopefully plant some seeds go to waste. Mr. B, thank you for that question. And I recommend going to Will's channel and checking out his presentation. It's all about freedom, which is a shorter, it's more digestible sized way to dive into this topic. But if you do want to go deeper and you really want the full download, then I recommend Mark Passio's Natural Law Seminar, which you can find on his YouTube channel as well. Just Googling these names and those titles will bring up what you're looking for. But, stay tuned. Tuning into this show, watching my podcast is another way that you can learn all about, because it's such a broad and all encompassing topic. It really applies to every single aspect of life. So if thank you for having the courage to ask that question. And that could be the most powerful question you've ever asked, because coming into understanding of this knowledge is going to improve and empower your life in every single way. So thank you for that. Thanks to everyone else for tuning in. I had a ton of fun with this broadcast. I'm going to keep bringing that fire every single week, do my best to serve you informative and useful and entertaining content as well. One last quick Patreon shout out to Edos Hugh and Slope Oak. Thank you for supporting the channel every month. I encourage everyone, if you want to contribute, that definitely helps me able to be consistent with my content and make sure the quality is as good as it can be. So I definitely want to invite you to join the Patreon. Let's see here. Again, like the video on your way out. If you haven't, that's the easiest way you can support. Also, I recommend, as a side note, checking out the animism episode that Will and I did recently. You can find that on my channel here or on his Natural Freedom League as well. That was a really good one, diving into a very important topic that I think a lot of aspects of natural law teachers are missing from the big picture. So yeah, that's going to do it for today. Thank you, everyone. So much love to you. Thank you for being a part of this this journey, this experience. And we'll see you next week, same time. But until then, be empowered, be inspired, and be encouraged.